Welcome to selfdiscoverymedia.com, where the orchard of wisdom shows are at your fingertips. It ignites your soul, your heart, your spirit, your mind, and your body with illumination from people who have made the journey before you. They're here now to help you on your journey, on your path of self-discovery. We are funded by you, the audience, and the people we interview. If you wish to support us, please go to selfdiscoverymedia.com and press on our Fund Action button. Anything is appreciated. We'd like you to sit back and enjoy the shows. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to selfdiscoverymedia.com. I am your host, Sarah Troy, and you are listening to Choose Positive Living this week with Linda Healer. Oh, what a beautiful name that she has, because she is a healer. She likes to heal people in a way that reduces their social anxiety and just enjoy life. And also she has this wonderful podcast called Normal Lies Podcast. You know, we tell ourselves lies all the time. And no, I'm not beating you up, because those lies have been conditioned to us by society. Society has told us that we've got to be this way and that way, and we end up lying to ourselves, to our inner selves, of who we really are, what we really want to be doing, and why we're here on earth. But she has made her own journey, and coaching gave her back her life. With so much social anxiety, it was easy to lose herself in her family and her work. Therapy helped, but still she had a crippling fear and anxiety every time she wanted to try something new. Now she lives an amazing life and doing things that she never thought possible. And the best part of it is she's helping others do the same. She's a life executive coach and host, owner of Normalize Podcast. And while working as a dental hygienist, Linda discovered coaching as another way to help people without having to put hands in their mouth, which nowadays, yeah. She is a graduate of the Accomplishment Coaching Coach Training and Leadership Program. And after graduation, she was invited to join AC's leadership team, where she shared her expertise and honed her skill in by training and mentoring other coaches. She's earned her professional certified coach credential through the International Coaching Federation. She's continued her education by receiving certifications in positive psychology coaching and earned certificate in systemic team coaching. She works with clients to uncover the shift, the stories, the lies, the voice in the heads that are constantly perpetually talking to them. And on her podcast Normalize, Linda and her guests explore societal and cultural lies that we are born into, and that has become, unfortunately, normalized. So today we are going to be talking about why coaching is so important to us, the podcast, the joy of it. I was a guest on her show. She's a beautiful host, folks. You'll feel very, very safe in her hands. And she asks all the right questions. So let's hope I do today here as well. Welcome to the show, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you for having me here. And I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on Normal Lives too.
Oh,
We had a
no, it was
lot
my
of
pleasure.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah, now we get to continue the conversation.
We certainly do. Let's talk about normal lies. You know, I have another site where my coaching packages are. And, you know, one of my paragraphs is saying, you're lying to yourself and you don't know it. And this
Yes.
lying to ourselves is because we're so busy trying to fit into an image that society has dictated for us, and that we're lying to the very core and the very being of who we are. But we don't realize we're lying, do we?
No, we don't. Because there's a part of us, well, because we've grown up with these lies
Mm,
since we were children,
yeah.
and they're made up from our experiences. So we can't help it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't help it. We don't know what the quote truth is or what our truth is because we're so busy living through that filter. We call it your survival mechanism. You can call it ego, shadow self. There's lots of different saboteurs. I mean, there's all sorts of different terms for it, but it's just a bunch of stories we made up as kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of them are reinforced by society and by our culture.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Culture's changing, though, isn't it?
Yes.
Which is
Yes.
really a delight to see. You know, we're seeing people kind of going, don't give me that BS, and they're tired of the perpetual that has been out there, and realizing most people, and I'm sure you see this in your coaching, feel that they're unseen and unheard. And it doesn't matter if they're in a room or they're the center of the attention. It doesn't matter what they're saying. They just feel nobody's seeing me or hearing me for who I am or what I'm saying. They're hearing what they want to hear, and they're seeing me in the image that they want to see me in. And I think people are crying out to be seen and heard for who they are.
Well, yes. And I believe that because we are so busy, we keep ourselves so busy at doing whatever it is we don't slow down to take the time to listen to each other, to really listen, and listen with the idea that I have to have a response as soon as they stop talking. We can't stand pregnant pauses. I had a guest on Normal Lives who talked about pregnant pauses and how he loves those because that's where he just shuts up and lets there be silence. And a lot of times people just start talking. He says that's where you get the real juice, the real wisdom, the real what's coming up, is because it gives some space for us to really collect our thoughts. I used to call, so I use the term, irritates some people. So I was running a group, and I was talking about, well, let's marinate on this. Let's talk about this. And then I'm someone who needs to take time to marinate and ponder things rather than if I have a chance. Sometimes you have to make snap decisions, but a lot of times I like to kind of marinate. And I think that's really important. So I was telling somebody, said, and another woman, and she said, oh, so you're a long processor. And I go, yeah, I guess I am. And the more people I've talked to about that, they say, yeah, I am too. But you wouldn't know it because we're in such a hurry. We're in there's this sense of urgency that has almost turned into emergency. Right.
Very well said. Yes.
Yeah. And so imagine the stress.
Yes.
That is being caused. I mean, if it's urgent, there's a level of stress. Okay. Yes, it's urgent. But then you go to emergency because emergency is like, oh my gosh, something dire is happening and we need to like life and death. And I think that's where our stress level has gone. And I think that's why people they're sick.
Yes.
They're sick. I mean, even if I think this is why we all have a lot of physical illnesses, and we're not slowing down to take care of ourselves because we feel we have to be on this treadmill 24/7.
Well, we talked about something in our show about, being the plodder or taking the leap, and how, rah, rah, take the leap. And,
Yes.
and it's like, I think the leap is deciding just simply to move forward one step at a time. There are times where you can make bigger strides, or you can actually take a leap. It actually prompted me to do my own show this week. I'm basically hot and cold. I went with the weather and what our conversation was, and it's that life is hot and cold. One day, no, it's too cold to do anything today, and another day it's hot and sunny, and you're inspired to do everything. But it's also about pacing oneself, and about taking time to smell the roses, and that it's okay, as you say, to have the pause. It's okay to do nothing, and you're more sure-footed, and you're going to root more, and everything's going to be solidified more with the one step at a time, as opposed to leaping to where? Where are you leaping to? Right. With what? Do you have the parachute on as you're jumping off that cliff? Or are you just taking that leap? There is such a thing called preparation. And people are too busy too busy to be prepared, right? And I'm just going to do it, just going to do it. Yeah, well, where's the prep? Because if you don't have the prep or the tools, you could very well fall.
Exactly. Well, and also, what's the end game?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
What's the end game? I mean, the the only end that we all experience is we're going to die someday.
Yes.
That's it.
And how do
That's
we want to be remembered?
yeah, well,
Right?
and how do we want to live our life?
Yes.
Do we want to live it stressed out and anxious? Or do we actually want to enjoy our life? And is it possible? That's the thing
Mm.
is I personally, from a standpoint of what our society says that we should be happy with, I don't even know. Like okay, so I know you're in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
we're in America, I'm in the United States, and we talk about the American dream.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is the American dream? Well, if you were to ask any person, it would be, I think what we're fed is you get married, you have 2.4 kids, you have cars, and for women, you have the career and you have the kids and you're trying to balance all of this stuff and you live in the suburbs and yada, 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 yada.
And you have debt.
And you have debt coming out of your ears.
Yes.
And is that what you want?
Right.
And I believe that the American dream, and I think even the Canadian, any dream anywhere,
mm-hmm.
is you get to live your life the way you want to live it.
But it's also discovering in your own self-discovery.
Yes.
What kind of life is that?
Yes.
And it's also discovering on that journey of life that, I've really loved it this far, but you know what? I'm going to branch off or I'm going to try something new. It's not getting stuck in, well, I'm going to do this program now and stay in that program. It's about
Correct.
Constantly evolving because your life is evolving. Opportunities are evolving. I'm going to take my daughter as example here. She went back to school late in life. She went back to school, I think, at 27 to become a social worker. And she has a 1-year-old right now, and she's working kind of part-time. All she wants to be is a stay-at-home mom, but she's working part-time. But her industry in working, and she's working in people in transition, with mental challenges. And she loves the work, but it's shift work all the time. And you've got to wait so long to have, proper hours. And with a child, it's very difficult. And then she decided the other day, you know what, I think I'm going to go back to school and become a teacher and bring my social work into the teaching.
Oh, brilliant.
She's 33 now. She wants to have another child next year. And it's like, yes, she went into doing the social work because she wanted to make a difference. But don't go into something, I'm going to make a difference here, there, and it's going to be done like this. Go into it with your why. Why do you want to do it? Well, I want to have an impact. Then allow yourself to go on the journey to discover what that impact is, with whom, where it is, and even if it's in a totally different direction. You're never going to waste the tools and the skills that you've learned. But we want to have a life by numbers, isn't it? Live by numbers, paint by numbers. And it's like, no, be exploratory. Be exploratory of who you are, why you are, what interests you. And as you go down that path, allow those things to guide you and maybe even shift you into totally different directions. But it's about it's coming from the core of you, not from the outside in, from the core of you. And it's okay to change your mind and go in a different direction.
Yes. And I love that, the discovering and then the growing. And and with me, I think we all want the answers. Like I want to know. I want to know what it is that I want to do in the future. And I have never known. I have never known, even when I was younger. I thought I wanted to be a teacher. I thought I wanted to be a counselor because, I suffered with social anxiety. And so I thought, and I went to therapy and I thought, well, if my therapist can't fix me, and he finally said, he's like, you're fine. You've healed the past,
Mm,
forgiven your parents, forgiven this, healed that. And I said, yeah, but I still have this anxiety. People scare me.
mhm.
And I may know why, but it doesn't matter. I still don't want to be in social situations.
Right.
This was back before we even had answering machine. I didn't even want to answer the phone
Mm,
because I didn't know who was on the other end. And I didn't know if I would be able to. I mean, what if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to? I'm going to look like an idiot, right?
ah, right.
And forget about, and it didn't matter whether it was, whether we went to a party and whether I didn't know anybody there or if I knew everyone there and they were family and friends, it didn't matter. I was a wreck. Going to the grocery store was, I mean, thank goodness I had a job and I had to go to work. That forced me, and it actually forced me to stretch my comfort zone. But the thing about it is, I didn't know. I mean, dental hygiene was not my passion,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted to go to college and I wanted to be able to take care of my kids. I knew I wanted to have a family, but I was always looking for what was next. And I
Yes.
was doing that journey, as you talked about, like that journey of self discovery and with the therapy and then reading books and just, of course, I wouldn't do programs with anybody. I would be reading books because
Mm-hmm.
I was too afraid to do that. And this was before the internet and all of this wonderful stuff, which is amazing, but I was growing. And then one time I read a book. It was one of Oprah's book club, way back when. I think it was 2008. She had Eckhart Tolle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You familiar?
Oh, yes,
And
familiar with him. Yeah.
yes, and so he wrote. She chose A New Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? It's something about finding your life purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I had been doing all sorts of you. I want to find my life purpose. Like that's exactly what you were talking
Yeah.
about. And so it's like you had me at life purpose. So I read
Mm-hmm.
that book and did the webinar, which again, that was beginning of the computer age,
Mm-hmm.
and did the webinar. And I was like, I want to talk about this book. I need to talk about this book. And but no one I knew, because I didn't have any friends. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
my kids friends parents were the closest friends, and I had a couple of friends from work, and that was about it as far as close friends. And so I found this book group, and it was in the big city of Rochester. I live in a rural area, and I had to, and Rochester's not a big city, but it might as well have been on the moon,
Mm-hmm.
because it was terrifying for me to have to drive in downtown, because if I got lost, this was before GPS in our
GPS. Yeah.
phones, even before Garmin's and things like that. I would have had to have stopped and asked somebody for directions. And so I actually talked a friend, a coworker, into going with me to that book group. And the cool thing about it was a life coach
Mm-hmm.
who was facilitating that discussion. And I look at it now, and you know, meeting him changed my life.
Yeah.
But look at all of the threads that
Mm-hmm.
had to happen
Mm-hmm.
to get me there. And I
Exactly.
had to keep taking action, even though I was terrified. I was able to do at least take a step. I bought that book. I did the webinar. I did what I could do. um, I figured out how to get myself there. And then there's a coach. And I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Louise Hay,
Oh, yes. Oh,
and
that
you can heal
amazing
your
woman.
life.
Yes.
Oh yes. And her affirmation. So when I was at work, because I loved dental hygiene. I loved the people, but it wasn't, I knew there was something else for me, but I didn't know what it was.
It was just a job, not a
It
career,
was,
not a
yes,
purpose. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And so I would carry around in my pocket. I had a 3x5 card with affirmations on it. And whenever I had a break, I would pull that card out and I would just say the affirmations. And one of them was, I now create a wonderful new job. And I would just say that to myself over and over. I now create a wonderful new job. And then all of a sudden, here is this, oh, a life coach. What is it that you do?
Mhm.
And when he started talking about, I mean, he did the wheel of life and he talked about that. And but what really got me is we help you step outside your comfort zone and we help you stretch that. And I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is what I want. This is what I need. And I
Yes.
think this is what I want to do with the rest of my life because I knew I wasn't the only one out there. If anyone looked at me from the outside, you would have thought I had it all,
Right.
that I was successful.
Mhm.
It's like nothing to see here. It's
Yes.
like Obi-Wan
Yes.
Kenobi. These are not the droids you are looking for,
I've
right?
actually used that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe when I started telling my story, because I wouldn't tell anybody. I was
Right.
embarrassed because I had a great life. I had a wonderful husband, two beautiful, amazing children, a great career. I mean, I had it all. And I felt I was on that hamster wheel. I was like,
Mm.
okay, well, I'm driving and striving, doing things as best I can, slapping on the smile.
Yes.
But inside I'm like dreading and terrified. And it's this like, I don't want to go on with
Yeah.
life
You
like
weren't
this.
connected.
No.
You weren't plugged in, and that book, that webinar, meeting that person finally gave you, this is where the plug goes. This is where the energy is, this is where my connection is. But had you not gone through what you've gone through, how would you be able to help people in that transition? Because the best teachers are those that have gone through it themselves, not the people that have gone to university and done all the book and the theory stuff, but the people that have actually gone through it. And I relate so much to what you were saying because I was a sickly child. So I was a lot of the time off school. B, I was an odd child, very spiritual, could see the future. I also was a knowingness child where statements would come out of me that was way beyond my years. And so I was always a bit of a freak. So I also had very, very few friends, and felt absolutely cripplingly uncomfortable in a crowd. And people think I'm an extrovert. I'm actually an introvert with extroverted tendencies, but I'm not the extrovert. And that was rather like you. You don't want to make a fool of yourself. You don't want to embarrass yourself. But where did that embarrassment come from as a child? Why should a child even think of being embarrassed? Right? They go
Right.
and do all
Right.
sorts of goofy things and we laugh at them because it's wonderful in their discovery. Who imposed this embarrassment issue on us that stopped us from moving forward or exploring ourselves? Because we were always so worried about the eyes on us that we didn't see the eyes within us and see who we really were and what we really were capable of. So we sold ourselves short all the time. Because what if I don't live up to that expectation? What if I live it down? What if I make a fool of myself? And when I left school early, I didn't graduate because I had missed too much to ever catch up. So at 16, I exempted myself from school and I BS'd myself into every job. Yeah, sure, I can do it. And I was the first woman rep for Mobil Oil in South Africa. Didn't know a thing about oil, knew nothing about
Wow.
oil. I knew the companies that I was serving knew about oil. Basically, what it was down to was customer service. And I knew I could listen, and I knew I could address concerns, and I knew I could make people feel comfortable. And I think this is the thing that in taking that next step is know your strengths. And those strengths come to you so naturally, you don't think about them. When we think about something, that's when we become self-conscious about it. But when we're doing things that we're not thinking about, it just comes naturally. That's naturally who you are. Nurture that, allow it to grow, and then it will discover where it's meant to be.
Yeah. I love that. Wow, there's so many places we could go there. So yes, you
Pick a
started off.
thread. Go.
Yeah, I know. It's like, yeah, I want to go everywhere. So what I love, you talked about, not being connected.
Mhm.
And so we're not the primary thing I think we're not connected to is ourselves.
Yes.
I mean, we don't even know. Like you said, we have to know
Yeah.
who we are.
Mhm.
In order to live our dream, we first have to know what it is that we want. And if we're, as children, as we're bombarded with all of these messages from other people, from society, but also from family, friends, the stranger on the street could say something that really impacts you. You don't
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
And so you have to decide, you have to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And so I love that. But that's one thing that I think my coaching practice to me, and I don't say this to too many people, but it's like my ministry, really.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
see it as my ministry.
Yeah.
And because there is a spiritual component to it.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be all woo woo. It's okay. You have to, but what do you believe in?
Spirituality isn't woo woo, folks. That again
No,
is an
it
outside
isn't.
in thinking. Yeah.
It is. It isn't. It's crazy. So it's really understanding, what do you believe?
Yes.
Right? It's figuring out, again, that discovering what you believe. That's
And what are
part
you
of it.
connected to?
Yes.
Within
Yes.
you, to the source of energy, whatever you want to call it,
Yes.
God, universe, spirit, right?
Right. Rainbow unicorn, whatever.
Exactly, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What is coming through you?
Yes.
That beautiful divine energy of whatever you want to call it, that is connecting you to your knowingness. The head, the noggin, has an awful lot of data, a lot of information. It's not the wisdom, it's the knowledge. The wisdom is knowing how to use that knowledge, when to use that knowledge. And that we have to be tuned in to that spirit, to that soul, to that heart. And in that combination, we'll know what we need to know, when we need to know it, from all the knowledge that's in our head. But we're so busy thinking and assuming, right?
Yes.
That we're not listening
Yes.
and feeling to know the knowledge, right? It's like, well, I guess if I do this, if it will happen this way, that way. No, that's assumption, right? But when you're in knowingness, and you know what I'm talking about, when that core is connected and you're in knowingness, then you don't need it to validate or verify or anything else. You just know it is. It simply is. And it's a beautiful place to be.
Yes. Yes. And you don't have to go to the mountaintop.
No.
You don't have to sit, you don't have to
Become the
meditate
monk.
for
No.
hours a day. You don't have to go away from civilization. In fact, that is I love to work with women who that's what they want to do. They still want to have their families. They still want to have
Yes,
their
of course.
careers,
Of course.
and they still want to be connected to themselves.
And they can be.
And they can be. It is possible.
Yes.
I've done it. I'm doing it,
Yeah.
and I've helped dozens of clients do it. But and the key is to have a really strong connection with ourselves, a strong connection with others, and a strong connection with our higher power, whatever we choose to call that.
Right.
So if we have all three of those, and they're, again, they're gonna ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But when we notice that we're off, like when I notice when I'm off, it's like, okay, what's going on here? I am really stressed. What is going on? It's like, well, you know what? I've been working nonstop.
Where's the
And
balance?
yes, I'm connecting with other people, but where have I been, keeping up my prayer practice or my meditation? Nope. Guess what went out was I didn't have time. So I haven't been meditating. I haven't been checking in with my family and having family time, or, you know what? I haven't gotten enough sleep.
Right.
So there's something that's out of whack. And so it's number one, it's noticing that. And anybody who's listening, you can do this. And I will tell you this, I tell my clients when they first come working with me, it's when we do their initial, exercises, and then we talk about what coaching is all about. I say, okay, so you're going to get triggered. And by triggered, I mean that survival mechanism, that ego, people, circumstances, things are going to trigger us because that part of us is not going away. What our job is to lower the volume of that voice and kind of figure out what has caused that trigger. And I tell them the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how's your well-being?
Mm-hmm. And they'll go, what?
Mm-hmm.
What's
And
well-being?
exactly. So right off the bat, we have that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that's not negotiable.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to do that, then I'm not the coach for you. And
But they don't understand the importance of it.
no,
The thing is that,
no.
we look at our computer programs making the computer slow. We delete them, we update them. We go and get our car fixed, oil change and tires and all of these things to optimize our car because it's driving us around. Well, this body's driving you around. And the mental, the physical, and the spiritual beingness of you has to be optimized. How do you do that? The meditation, which could be just simply a walk in nature, whatever it is that centers you, that calms you down, that takes you away from the outside. Exercising, good for your body. Diet, and balancing your life with time for you, time for family and friends, time for work, and time to explore. And if you're too busy in one area, then something else has to give. And that generally is us. And that's the last person that needs to be let go of, isn't it?
Right. Oh yeah, I was there. I was totally burnt out.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was like, oh, well, I'll take care of myself after I do this, whatever's
Sleep when I'm
left
dead,
over.
right? You hear that one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Right.
That could be coming up very soon.
Yes, exactly. But I was always, okay, well, yeah, I have to do this. And when that's done,
Yeah.
then whatever's left over will be for me. Well, guess what? There was never anything left over.
No.
And so I think we go back to like the normal lies is that self-care is selfish.
Yes. Yes.
And it's not true.
No.
And so there is selfishness. And you know what? Unless you have some sort of mental disorder, you know the difference between being narcissistic or having taken care of yourself. Yeah. You know the difference. Yes. Trust yourself.
Yes.
And
actually, just a point in that narcissism. Yes. I will take care of me, the narcissist, at your expense. Taking care of yourself isn't going to cost anybody else anything.
No, nope. Because you're again, it's that trusting yourself that you're not going to let you're going to still take care of your family. Yes. It's just adding yourself to the list.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, we are the energy substance that keeps the family going. So if we're running on depletion, what have we got to give? The old oxygenate yourself first. But people think, okay, I just need a good night's sleep or a good meal or, just a couple of hours off or something and I'll be fine. No, because you are like a clock that's been wound up so much, so tight that if you wind it anymore, the spring's going to break. Don't think that just one nap is going to do it. That whole thing needs to unscrew and get back into its equilibrium. And that means you've got to invest time into yourself. And I think that's the hardest thing. Two things I think are the hardest for people: time for themselves and learning to love themselves.
I am so glad you said that because as you're talking, it just reminded me. So I was born into the Christian faith and have, done a lot of studying. And one of the things that I think and forgive me, I've done a lot of studying, but I also don't know a lot. So I'm just going to
If you
say,
did, you'd be a computer, darling, not a person.
I know. And I forget a lot too. That's why I love notes.
Yeah.
That's why I take a lot of notes so I can go back to my notes. But one of the things that Jesus said is love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
That is a commandment.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
so think about that.
Yeah.
Love, he didn't just say love your neighbor.
Mm.
He said love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yeah.
So if you are not taking care of yourself as a Christian, you're not following one of Jesus' commandments.
The other thing too is when you're looking for love, be the love you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are that love, you will attract that same vibration. Be the peace that you're looking for. Peace isn't outside there waiting to be found. It's within you for you to bring forth. And when you step forth in self-love, love of who you are, why you are, and of service to others, with a harmonic, peaceful approach, we now have a wonderful symphony that will embrace people and calm them and help them look inside to the love that lies within them, just waiting to be ignited.
Oh, that was beautiful. There's one of those like pregnant pause, harmonic symphony. I love that.
We can't stay looking outside for the answers, but they're inside.
No, right.
I want somebody to love me. Well, love yourself first. Let people love you in your light. I want peace in the world. Then what are you doing to bring about the peace? Be the peace.
Yeah. Well, I have it right here on my wall. Gandhi, you must be the change you wish to see in the world.
Exactly. Everybody's looking for it outside. When I change my car, when I change my job, when I change my husband, when I change this and change that, it will be better. No, until you change what's on the inside. You may still have to change the husband and the job, but you're doing it because you know it no longer fits. It no longer serves you. It is no longer who you are. And we see this, we hear this all the time. She's not the woman I married. No, we grow, we evolve. Love the person in their growth, in their own self-discovery. Grow yourself. There'll be the thing about relationships, all relationships, whether it's a loving relationship with your children, or business relationship, it is you, them, beautiful in your own individual strengths. But when you come together, that beautiful love can then unite and be a wonderful force. It's not giving up of yourself. It's not that they complete me. They complement you.
That makes me want to throw up. I know. Yeah. I know. Yeah, you complete me.
Complete me. I won't be anything without you. Yes, you would be.
Yes.
Yes, you would be. In fact, you need to be that person that you are seeking in a partner to attract the right partner.
Yes. And what's funny is, so I married my high school sweetheart. In fact, we've known each other since we were in first grade.
Wow.
But we didn't start dating till we were seniors in high school. And we were coming up on our 38th wedding anniversary. Wow. But we've been together for 42 years. Wow. And I will tell you, though, that I was one of those starry-eyed young, teenager, 20-year-old when I got married, that, oh my gosh, my husband, he does complete me. Yeah. And I've had to discover, and with all of the growth, that, what we've had, it's a journey, and relationships are really, they're hard. Mm-hmm. But boy, I'll tell you, if you want to learn something about yourself, then really dive into some relationships, especially, a love relationship, because he has taught me more about myself. And I think vice versa. We've grown together. Mm-hmm. But it hasn't been easy. But I am so grateful that the two of us have been willing to do the work.
Yeah, that is the key thing there, the
Yes.
willingness to understand we're not the same people, we're in a different place. We need to know who we are as individuals to know who we can be as a couple. I had this wonderful, the Neglos, I've had them on many, many times, individually and together. And we did one show on relationships, and he's a channeler. He has this beautiful entity that comes through and speaks through him. And we were talking about relationships, and the two of them, just off the 49th wedding anniversary, just snuggling up together, right? And it's just so wonderful to see, because clearly the love is so there. But they admitted at the 13-year mark, they had to separate. Not that they didn't love each other, it's just that they couldn't connect with each other. They both each went off on their own individual journey of their own self-discovery, and then came back. The love was strong enough to bring them back, but they came back with more assuredness of who they were. And she works with women and does her thing. He does his channeling thing, and they also work together. And it strengthened their relationship so completely, where they support each other in each other's work, right? But then also support the work that they do together. And they're more in love now than they ever were. And this is sometimes, it doesn't mean you have to separate, but it does mean, we're at that stage in our relationship where we're beginning to lose our identity as a couple. What can we do to explore our own individual identity and how it works as a couple? We've got to be willing to do that work through that. Otherwise, I'm divorced. My husband would, there was many issues there. But, one of them is we'd never ever consider therapy or talking about it or anything, because unfortunately, it was always my fault. That's always a narcissist. When you're with a narcissist, I'm sorry, there is no way out other than out, because they never take ownership for anything. And I tried so long to kind of make it work, because the counselor in me wanted to fix it.
Right.
But it just was one of those things that never should have been and never would be. And so sometimes you've just got to call it quits, because it's not going to be. But if that love is there, and it's just a question of you're both a little confused of who you are or where you are in this situation, be willing to do the work.
Yes. And it's interesting because I'm thinking back of, my journey, and when I have clients come to me, they'll often come and say, if my husband would just change, if he would just, and I was the same way. It was all of my problems were caused because of my husband. And I seriously thought about getting a divorce because I was unhappy. And thank goodness, that's when I found my coach, and my coach challenged those thoughts.
Right.
And see, that's the problem, is if we don't have anyone to challenge those thoughts in our head, then, sometimes we follow them and we don't maybe make the best decisions. And I am so grateful now that I had that level of support. Now, again,
but just pause on it. Actually probably was nothing to do with your husband. It was to do with the childhood and everything else that you were still carrying, but he was the person to blame.
Right. Because he was the closest.
Exactly.
And I knew that he wasn't going to leave too.
Right.
So, because he's just such a loyal person. And I knew that if anything was going to happen, I was going to be the one to leave. And like I said, I considered it. And then I had, in doing my work, it was like having that mirror held up and going, well, sister, you ain't the easiest one to live with either. Right. And what can you be responsible for? So having that put back on me, go, whoa, well, have you told him how you feel? Have you had these conversations? No, I was the type that passive aggressive, and I would be quiet and silent treatment and all of that. But then it would be like one little thing and he left his socks, and then it would be like, rah, the socks on the floor. And it's like,
one sock too many.
How many times have I told you? And do you remember 2 years ago when you did this? And then it's like all of this stuff comes up.
Yeah.
And so I had to take ownership of that and go, yeah, you know what? You're right. And I don't know. I don't know how to do this
Yes.
because I wasn't raised
Mm.
to, my parents didn't have the skills.
No.
I never saw my parents argue. I never, everything, if they had to talk, they went and closed the door, and anger was not allowed in
Mm.
our house. And so I didn't know what to do with my anger.
Right.
And I think that really feeling our feelings, but not letting them take over, because
Yes.
that was the other thing too, is I was afraid that if I was angry, like it was going to destroy me.
Right. That's what we call being emotional over the emotions. All of the emotions are there for a reason. Anger, joy, everything. Well, why am I angry? What's causing it? What can I do about it? Or just spending the moment to release it. But becoming emotional about it that's when you're feeding that anger or that emotion and almost forgetting what caused it in the first place. So it's just being emotional for emotional sake. Sometimes people get caught in it because they like the attention, or sometimes people get caught up in it and they don't know how to get out because it's become a hurricane, right?
And it's comforting.
Yes, because
It's
you can
comforting.
also play the blame game and not ever take on responsibility.
Yes, you can be a victim.
Yes.
You can be the victim. But so I will tell you, that was me. I was the victim. I was always the victim. And there was a part of me that just loved to wrap myself in that. It was
Mm,
comfortable because then there was nothing that was expected of me.
true. Absolutely. You
So
hit the nail on the head there, right? Absolutely. Pause on that one. Pregnant pause on that one. You didn't have to take any responsibility, right?
nope, nope. It was everybody else's fault, or there was the
Exactly.
circumstances fault, or it
Yes.
was somebody. Yeah, I didn't. And so it was woe is me. That's what I would say.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
and I will say to my husband, like, oh, I can feel the woe is me is coming, or I could feel, and I would, but what would happen is I would get, I use the word depressed.
Mm,
I was never diagnosed with depression, but it felt like what I would imagine depression would be. It was like this deep, dark hole
yes.
was opening up, and it would just suck me in. And
Mm-hmm.
all I wanted to do was eat and sleep and I was just sad all the
That's
time.
depression, darling. That is depression. I suffer
Yes.
from it. Um, it's also that despair where somebody has gone into your guts and just pulled them right out.
Yeah.
And there is no rationality to it. There
No,
is no snap out of it. There is
no.
no talking yourself out of it. It now becomes a chemical imbalance that has absolutely consumed you.
Well, I don't know how I got out of it. Well, I had a pattern. So I had this pattern. And I hope that anybody listening pay attention to these things and be aware of them, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are patterns, and if we
Mm-hmm.
disrupt the pattern, we can get
Yes.
you out of it. And
Yes.
that's actually what coaching is about,
Mm-hmm.
is disrupting our normal patterns. But with me, it was okay. I would get into this depression. I would sleep, and then I don't. Maybe it was, I don't know what it was, but I would then go, okay, I can't do this anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like, okay, I'm going to get myself out of this. So then I would start exercising, and then I would start eating right. And then, I'd be okay, let's go. And I was feeling good
Yeah.
and I could do it. And then I could do it. And I think what happened was I would get too much into that.
Right. The pendulum
And
swinging too much the other way.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then it was like, ugh. And then
Yeah.
then I'd get anxious and I'd get stressed and I wouldn't be able to sleep. And then it was like, why am I doing this anyway? Because that here comes the victim.
Yeah.
Here comes the victim is like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't have what you want. Who do you think you are?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so then that voice, or that thought, and I don't even think it was conscious
Mm-hmm.
at the time. It was just this pattern that had happened. And I actually, a side note on that, um, that whole context of I can't have what I want is what ran the show for many,
Mm-hmm.
many years. And again, with my coaching, I was able to distinguish that, but I wasn't able to actually shift it,
Mm-hmm.
uh, totally shift it. I did like little bits and pieces, but I have a colleague who does NLP,
Yes.
neuro linguistic programming, and she does coaching she's a trained master certified NLP coach. And she did an exercise with me that where I buried that lie, that myth, that I can't have what I want. And I will tell you that it was amazing how it just shifted everything. And so I'm telling you, the power of coaching is amazing. And it doesn't always happen. That's the other thing too. This just popped into my head. Transformation. Okay. So everybody wants transformation. Well, transformation, when you see it, it's like, Cinderella was transformed when the fairy godmother waved her magic wand. So it happened in an instant, right?
But she went back to her rags.
She did. And that's true. So transformation can be like all of a sudden, whoa, like I just got that. So it can happen in an instant.
Yeah.
However, my bet is that you had many, many moments of before that, the thing that was said, and you go, yeah, I get that. I hear that. But it just isn't, it's not quite clicking yet. It's not quite clicking. So I think we need those moments to chip away for that actual transformational moment to happen.
Yeah. I call it the bottoming out, the cosmic 2x4. Where, like it's all these little messages coming along about shifting you and shifting you and shifting you. We're too busy, we ignore them. And the next thing you know, the cosmic 2x4 has flattened us. And we have to rise up out of our own ashes. There is no other thing. It's either, just blend into the earth and disappear, or you've got to get back up. And sometimes in that, from those ashes, we can become who we're meant to become, because now we have to listen to get back up. We have to apply. We have to do the work. And you can sit back and go, I'm not going to, but you're going to stay where you are. But if you want to get back up, then it is, okay, I can't go back to the same programming. I can't, what put me here, I can't go there. I can't go back to that. There has to be something else. I'm willing to take a different path. And then kind of put that wonderful, adventurous, exploratory nature into it, right? This is my self-discovery of who I am. What is my meaningful purpose? Where am I meant to be of service? How do I get there? And that willingness to immerse yourself and be reborn, which, Christianity talks about. I referred a great deal to like giving birth to ourselves, right? Yes. And that birth to ourselves and holding our own beautiful souls as a newborn and saying, you're in discovery now, with this wonderful knowledge that you have as an adult, with knowing what paths to take and not paths to take. It can be absolutely, utterly beautiful. But sometimes people get stuck in the, I've bottomed out and I don't know how to get back up because I want to get back up to the same thing. And it keeps keeping you down because it keeps telling you, no, you can't go back there. And some people do get up and go back to the same thing and get knocked down again a few times before the light bulb goes off. Well, I guess I better go in a different direction. But we get the signs. Do we pay attention? And if we don't pay attention, the attention's going to be God.
Right. And it's just going to continue over and over. The same lessons are going to keep coming until we get it.
Until we graduate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you brought up a good point about Cinderella and the transformation, how and I think this kind of speaks to your point. So yes, Cinderella was transformed into this beautiful princess, and then boom, she's back in her rags. But the thing about it was she had a taste.
Yes.
She had a taste of what it was like to be that princess and be at that ball. And it's like, ooh, okay.
Because sweep your own flaws.
Exactly. Well, because that's what can happen too.
Yeah.
Is we can say, okay, we can do, we're on our road to transformation and good things are happening. And then all of a sudden, and I know I've done this to myself, it's like, oh, this is too good to be true.
Yeah.
And then the self-sabotage starts coming in, and it's like, okay, this, I can't have this. Like, because again, like if we go back to my story as the victim, so having success doesn't compute with being the victim,
Right.
because who's responsible for this success? It can't be me, because I'm a victim to everybody. So what is this all about? And then boom, it's gone.
Yeah.
So then I'm the victim again. But the thing is, I got a taste of that. Hey, you know what? That was actually kind of fun.
Yes.
How can I get more of that? How do I get that? And how do I hang on to it? Or how do I keep moving forward?
And if we find it becomes an observation, as a victim, people were there initially. But then it's like they're tired of you being the perpetual victim and they walk away from you. When you've stepped into any form of success, right? Any form of your own self-triumph, and you look at it and go, you know what? People are actually communicating with me. People want to hear from me. People want to see me. And clearly, I am doing something that is resonating out, that is positive. This thing is working. Let's keep nurturing it. One thing I used to do with my clients was I'd have them write down 2 columns. One, all the things that they felt being hard done by, all the negatives in their life, and then all the things they're grateful for. And the grateful list would always be much shorter than the other. And then I would say to them, okay, which one are you going to feed? Now, if you want all that misery, keep feeding it. But if you want to feed that gratitude and expand that gratitude and truly see where that gratitude comes from and feed that gratitude, and everything that's to do with that gratitude will grow. Because I think a lot of the time we don't pay attention to all the beautiful gifts that are around us, that are there for us. Even the experiences we have, they're not happening to you, they're happening for you. And if we can see what it is we're meant to learn through it, what it is that is actually at our fingertips that we never saw. I'm sure you can resonate this. You drive along and go, there's that beautiful tree on the side of the road at such and such. I've never seen it before. Where did it come from? It's always been there. We didn't see it because we're either, not connected, or we're too busy to see it. Suddenly we slowed down, we paid attention to the beauty around us, and we suddenly see that tree. Imagine how many other things we're missing because we're feeding the misery.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that, because years ago when I did my positive psychology coaching certificate, they talked about the science, like our brains we are born to look for the negative.
Yeah.
And so we have to actually create the neural pathways in order to become positive beings. And so I know with my clients, the first thing I start out with are share some wins, some successes that you've had since we spoke last. And it's so funny because, and I tell them why I'm doing this. I explain, it's like, we're just trying to build new neural pathways, because I will tell you, more often than not, they give me like 1 or 2 things. It's like, and they're like, I get like 30 seconds of silence at first. And it's hilarious. And it's like, well, I can't think of anything. I go, you know what? I'm going to challenge you. Come up with at least 2 things right now. And so they struggle, and and then they find them. They get a couple of things. And then each week that they come back, there's more and more. And I even had one client, she spent half her time in her sessions on wins. And I finally had to say to her, I go, look, if this is giving you value to just share your wins with me, then that's great. But I also, are you getting value from, like, I want you to have value, because I'm always checking in with, are you getting what you need? And she's like, yes. She said, because it makes me stop and take
Mm,
inventory.
mhm.
And then it also sets me up for what I want to talk about with you.
Right.
Be- so it was feeding into what she needed.
The
So
trajectory, right? Right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I really, and I think that's where gratitude
Yeah.
comes,
Yeah.
right? And not gratitude of because I've done this before too, is, oh, I think, again, Oprah, I'm a huge Oprah fan.
Yeah, me too.
She would say, oh, you keep a gratitude journal and write 3 to 5 things you're grateful for at the end of the day. And so I was doing it and I was writing it down, and it was like, yeah, this is great, but it didn't really mean anything.
Hmm.
And that's because you can't just write it down. You actually have to feel the feeling of
Yes.
gratitude along
Yes.
with it. It's not, you
Yes.
got to drop it from your head
Yeah.
into your heart.
Yeah. That's what your heart is here for, folks.
Mm-hmm.
It is here to feel. It feels the wisdom, it feels the gratitude, it feels the love. It is literally that pump of life. And when you feel something, you watch a competition and say, that was sung perfectly, that was danced perfectly, but where was the feeling? And then you've got somebody that comes up that may have been off a note or off a step, but the feeling behind it just got you so emotional. That is what we're longing for. Something to turn on our emotions in a way that moves us, that moves our hearts. And that is the connection we want people to have. Be connected to your heart. It's incapable of lying. It's always your truth. It's always your center core. And you can't listen to your soul, that beautiful divine wisdom, if your heart is closed off. How many people close their heart off because they've been hurt? And they expect to carry on living and enjoying life. Mm-mm. Your heart has to be open to enjoy life, because you have to feel life, knowledge, everything. Everything is about feeling. If you're afraid to feel, you're afraid to live.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are afraid to feel, there's help out there. I
Yes.
mean, there is support. And that's another message I really want to get out is, if you're resonating with this but you don't know how to do it,
Mm-hmm.
there are so many resources out there.
Exactly.
And I will
All it
tell
needs
you,
is your free will.
yes,
You just say, I don't like being where I am anymore. I need the help, and I'm willing to ask for it. That is that step that we were talking about. That is actually
yes,
a leap of faith in itself.
yes, 100%, 100%. Yeah, because I will tell you that I have seen people transform their lives. I have a couple of, well, over the years, but right now I have a client. She has a regular therapist, she has a trauma therapist, and she has me. And this woman is doing amazing things. And it's so cool. She doesn't see all of us every week
Mhm.
for an hour, but she has us on her team. Like,
Right.
we are part of her team. And so we talk now. She's been through, I have a 4-month program that I require of all new clients. So she's been through that. Then after that, we just decide what the client needs.
Mhm.
And so she's kind of weaned off, because my goal is not to
Yes.
have someone coming to me every week for an hour.
Yeah.
No, I want you to have the tools and the
Yes.
skills to really handle whatever is thrown at you. And if you get off track, I'm here,
Precisely.
just
Yeah.
like, sometimes with the coaching, I'll say something will come up and I'll go, that keeps coming up. That's not really a coaching issue. That's a therapy issue.
Mm.
I think you better make an appointment with your
Right.
therapist for
Yeah.
a tune up. That's what I just
Yes.
say,
Yes.
for a tune up.
Yeah,
And
the whole point of what your work is to help people have the skills and the tools for themselves to walk forward in life. We see too much of different types of therapy where it makes them dependent on the therapist. And
yeah,
really, it is about the bottom dollar, folks. The more they have you keep coming back, the more money they're making. So you've really got to be very careful of who you go to. Does this person want to see you grow your own wings? Right?
Yes.
Is this person going to help you fly off into life self-contained in abundance, or does this person want to keep you on the hook? Because if they do, change therapists.
Yeah. I definitely would question that. And that's a really good point too, is when choosing a therapist, make sure you interview a few
Yes.
of them.
Yeah,
You know, just like,
I had one woman, you're going to love this. You know how there's speed dating?
yeah.
She did speed shrinking.
Yeah.
She interviewed a whole load of shrinks, and speed shrinking just to find out, do
I
you hear
love
me?
it.
Do you see me? Or are you just robotically going through the things, right? We can question them. We're giving them
Yes.
our vulnerability. We're trusting them with the deepest, darkest secrets. We want to know the hearers that they care and that they can help us and that there isn't another agenda there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So it's so interesting because uh, we as coaches and we set out our shingle and we're a business,
Yes.
right? So in part of my training was, grow your business. This is how you do it. And then at one point, again, talk about learning, the
Mm-hmm.
universe sending me what I needed to learn. At one point, I got really sick. This was probably 5 years into my coaching, and I got a really bad case of shingles.
Mm.
And and again, I go back to I was struggling with some internal work,
Yes.
and I was fighting it. I was resisting it, and I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was stressing myself out, and it killed my immune system. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't eating right. I was doing a low carb diet. It killed my immune system. And so I got a really bad case of shingles. Well, what did that do for my coaching practice? I was flat on my back for months.
Yeah.
And so I had some longer term, part-time clients that kept me going. But then as I was starting to get better, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get out there and get some more clients. So I ended up hiring some sales coaches that work with coaches. And their whole thing was so in order to make a sale as a coach, you need to drag people down into their pain points,
Ah.
right? And then you are the answer for them. Well,
I know.
it
Mm-hmm.
it was awful.
Yes.
And I didn't get one client, and again, I was sick. I was just sick because it didn't fit with me. And I'll
Right.
never forget, I'll never forget after about 6 months, and I'm sitting on the couch, and I looked at my husband, I go, I can't do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do this anymore. This doesn't fit with my integrity.
Right.
I don't want people to work with me because they think I have the answer for them or I'm the only one. This is awful.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he goes, oh, finally.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yes.
so he's like, well, then what are you going to do? And I thought about it, and again, I was like meditated and prayed, and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And it's like, well, I come from the dental world. So what do we do when a patient comes in and the doctor says, you know what, you need a crown, or you need a root canal, or you need that tooth pulled? The next thing and the dentist that I work for, I loved him because he was so ethical, and he said, this is what I recommend, and go get a second opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, that, yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's what I'm going to do. So from that time on and to this day, I have conversations with people about coaching. I make sure, and the other thing is, we then spent time with that patient explaining why they needed that crown,
Mm-hmm.
why they needed that root canal or that tooth pulled, so that when they did go and interview or get that second opinion, they knew what they were talking about.
Right.
They were educated. So when I talk to someone about coaching, It's okay. So, what are you, number one, what are your goals? What is it? Where do you want to be? And then, what are you looking for in a coach?
Yeah.
Do they need training? Because coaches, anybody can just print out a card and say they're a
Right.
coach. There are no state or federal regulations.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, do you want your coach to have training? Yes. Okay. So now do you want them to be credentialed? And tell them about the International Coaching Federation. And do you want them to be credentialed through them, or doesn't that matter to you? And then it's like, okay, great. And then I'm always listening for, am I a fit?
Yes,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Mm, mm.
And then at the end, I say, look, and actually I tell them right up front, look, this is great. I want to have this conversation with you. And I'm going to recommend you interview at least one or two other coaches.
Yeah.
Because that immediately relieves the pressure. They know I'm not trying to sell them something.
Right.
Because if I'm a fit for them, I definitely want to work for them, but
Precisely.
that's up to them. And this is hard work to do. You and I know, and probably the
Yes.
people listening know, that this is hard work. You need to have the right coach,
Yes.
and it has to be the right time.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Everything you said, I 100% agree with. And this is kind of one of the reasons I do the podcasts I do. It's not only the inspiration that begets invitation, but it's that for coaches, it's if you've heard them, you've heard their own story. We don't want somebody that hasn't been through it. We don't want somebody that has never fallen. We don't want somebody that is just out for the money or for the glory or the notch in the belt. There's too many of those out there. We just don't want them. We want people that are willing to be vulnerable so they can help the vulnerable. And that's the reason why I do these shows. And I recommend people listen to the shows when they're looking for a coach. Listen to a few of them. I have many of them here. Who resonates with you?
Right.
Who do you hear and go, I'm connected. I feel something there. Then they reach out and have the conversation and take it from there. But the beauty of the podcasting, of listening, is like, do I hear, do I feel this person? Do I want to know this person? And, we say in business that you are selling yourself before you're selling anything else.
Mm-hmm.
And if in a podcast, you've sold yourself authentically in a way of, this is who I am, this is why I do what I do, this is whom I wish to serve, and people really do feel it from the core, then that's the door opener. Right?
Yeah.
Then you can take it from there. And, I know you do that on your own podcasts as well. And it's representing people of who they are, why they're doing what they're doing. And when it resonates with someone, they feel they have someone they can reach out to. And it isn't about the sales. It's not about, I've got to have this amount of people, the 10 figures or this or that. Really, that is kind of, it's on its way out, that percent, because it's an outsider in living life. It's about helping that one person at a time. And do you trust me with your vulnerability?
Mm-hmm.
And, I've all but one, every psychiatrist I've ever seen has always ended up on the couch. The reversal. One didn't. She kept me waiting for an hour, and all she did for the hour that we were together was, I'm mad about being kept waiting for the hour. And I said, well, I'm mad the fact that you've just taken this last hour to talk about it. So I never saw her again. So you've got to understand why the people are doing what they're doing. What is their agenda? And if their agenda as a coach is to see you develop your own wings and fly securely, safely, abundantly, then you've got the right coach.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Very beautifully said. Yeah.
And you've taken that journey. You know what people need. Not only have you got the credentials, you've been there. Whether it's exactly the same thing with what they're going through, you know what it's like to be stifled, to be crippled, to be afraid, to not know your own value, to not even trust yourself. And that discovery of who you are, why you are, and your own beautiful abundance. You've worked for it. You've journeyed for it. You've done all the work that you do with your clients, you've done on yourself. And you've had other people help you get there. Isn't that the kind of coach that you want, folks? Somebody who's been willing to do the work themselves. And you know that you're still a work in progress.
Oh,
That
yes.
it's not the be all and the end all. And as you said, you haven't got all the answers. And there's
Mhm.
sometimes with your clientele, you may be in discovery of what those answers are,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I learn a lot about myself. In fact, back when I was a mentor coach, uh, the year after I graduated from my coach training, I was able to go back on the leadership team, and we were assigned our participants in the program who we were going to coach. And I remember that the weekend that this took place in New York City, the weekend that we were there, we met the participants. There was this one woman. She was an executive at a major corporation, and she looked like a model. I mean, she
Mm,
was beautiful, she was smart, she was talented. And here's little Linda
mhm,
from little, rural New York, who flew in, and I'm looking at her, and she's so high powered, and I was so intimidated.
mhm,
And I just remember praying, oh God, please have them assign me to anyone but her, anyone but her.
mhm.
But and I don't know if I've heard people say that the universe doesn't hear the negative.
No,
It just hears
it's
the
the positive. Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, be
So
careful what you ask for, right? Because all they heard
exactly.
was is a sign.
Right, right. Exactly. So you know exactly what happened at the end of
Uh-huh.
the training weekend. They're, oh, we're announcing the who your mentor coach is going to be, and we're standing at the front of the room, and they announced I was going to be coaching her, and my heart sunk. And she wasn't happy either.
Mm,
She immediately went to the leaders of the program and tried to get me fired even before she did not want me as her coach. And she wanted one of the executive
mm,
coaches that have, were on, again, higher up in the leadership track.
mhm.
And they held firm, and they said
Good
no.
for them. Good for
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you get
And
all
I
uppity with me.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And so it was interesting because she wouldn't show up for her calls. We would schedule calls and she wouldn't show up, or she'd show up and she'd be totally uncoachable.
Mhm,
And I'll never forget this one time she showed up. We were probably on the phone for 15, 20 minutes. And I said something that totally set her off. And I don't even know what it was, but she hung up on me.
mm,
And I was in tears. So I called my coach, who was one of the leaders of the program. He was coaching me on my coaching. And of course, he let me get the emotion out
mm,
because we're emotional beings. And he's like, okay, all right. Are you good? Yep, I'm good. And because I wasn't coachable at that point, but
mhm.
then I worked through the emotion, and I'm like, okay. And he said, Linda, she is your greatest teacher. And he said, if you can learn to be with her anger,
Mm,
because he said, what do you make her anger mean? And I go, well, anger means she doesn't love me. Like, she doesn't like me. She doesn't love me. She doesn't want me to exist.
mhm.
And that was all my story, right?
Right. Exactly.
And he said, as long as you are in that story, in your story, then you can't reflect back. He says, what's your job as a coach? And I said, just to reflect back. Yeah. So it's now you're personalizing it rather than just saying,
Yes.
hey, you sound angry.
Mm,
Or what's the anger about? What's triggering? What did I say or what did I do that triggered you? And
mhm.
get curious about it. So but I took it on and
Right,
I
of
made
course.
it personal.
Yeah. Yep. Been there, done that. Yes.
Yes. And again, that's basically with clients,
Mhm,
is that's what I do. It's like, we learn to step back and notice our triggers. Notice what triggers. So her anger triggered me.
right. Did she come
And
back?
yes, so the end of that story is they stuck with their guns, and she finally realized that I was her coach. And then she started empowering me as her coach. And at the end of the year, she she acknowledged me, and she ended up hiring me as her coach beyond that for another year.
So as he said, your greatest teacher.
Yes. Yes.
And her greatest teacher too.
And her, yes. And to this day, like, we keep in touch, and she's just so, she's like, I'm so grateful you didn't give up on me.
Right.
And I
And
said, well,
we assume because they're executive and power and this and
yes.
that they have it all together. They don't need a coach. And they don't think they do, because they think they've got it all together. And they're scared that the light's going to be shone on their vulnerabilities, their insecurities, because they feel if they show that to anyone, there will be a fraud. Nobody will take them seriously. And so, what we're seeing again in business today that's changing. Yeah, we want to see your strength, but we don't mind seeing your vulnerability because it makes you human. And I think that's actually what the pandemic has given us. Yes. So many people had to go to Zoom calls. So many people were interviewed in their own home. And it was just people just, with everything that everybody was going through, was being open and honest. And just, we're all in this, we're all suffering from this. And it was almost permission for people to say, I'm not doing well. And it's broken down so many doors, and it's really helped so many people, move forward into saying, it's okay not to be okay. That isn't a reflection on my capability.
Yes. And I think to add to that is, it's okay to not be okay. You don't necessarily have to go on social media,
right,
and share everything, too much information, or even at work. So if you're having an issue, I'm not saying that you should, walk around telling everybody your business, but you can go to HR and say, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
What do you have to help me?
Yeah.
I need some support.
Right.
Or, or if you have a colleague at work, you can share that with. I think, and I have a gentleman who I've gotten to be acquainted with that is, he's started, his name's Kevin Rusticy, and he's started this HR revolution where he talks about that. And he talks about how companies need to be more people-centered rather than profit-centered.
People, planet for profit. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I really, I have great hope that we are shifting that. We definitely are. And he's working really hard to make sure that happens. And have
you interviewed him yet?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Those are the kind of interviews we need. You're right. Excellent.
Yep. Yes, he was just on. And because again, he's all about this personal growth. We have to focus on ourselves.
If we invest in the people, and the people are feeling enriched and abundant in who they are and why they are, they're going to bring all of themselves to what they do. If we've got people that are feeling insecure and unvalued, even abused, then what is going to happen? Everything you build is going to be crumbling. Nothing is ever going to be secure. It will fall. It will fall. There's a gentleman that I interviewed under my Let's Get Synced shows, German gentleman, Glenn. His company is called Pure Necessity, and it is about investing in people, planet, for profit, not the profit at the expense of the people and planet, which is what we've seen for so long. And he's in Germany, but that whole Let's Get Synced series showed me of how many people, ambassadors, coaches, people with their companies, working with organizations, working with governments, working with all sorts of industries, into change the approach, into investing in the people, the resources from the planet, and looking at profit totally differently. It is happening, but we do need to escalate it. And people like you and people like him are the people that are going to bring awareness to how we need to change this, because change does not happen at the top, folks. It happens from the people at the bottom saying change needs, and somebody who's willing to get out there and orchestrate it.
Yes, Yes. And yeah, we need to hit critical mass. We
Yes,
just need to hit critical mass, and we're doing it.
we are.
And it has to do with everything. With, you think about racism.
Hmm.
And so what people
Sexism.
is sex, all the
Yes,
isms,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
And what I think people want to do is they want the government, they want
Yes.
these systems, they want them to change and make all
Mhm.
of these policies. But the problem is that these policies are being created with the same consciousness that created the problem in the first place.
Precisely.
So it is so important for each one of us to do our
Mm.
own work and to again be that change
That
that
we
we
see.
wish to see
Mhm.
in the world,
Yes,
that is changing the world.
it is.
And
It is.
because, and this is, again, this is what I tell clients, and I'm telling everyone here, if you just focus on you and taking care of you, and getting your head right, getting your heart right, really living from your essence,
Mhm.
from who you are, then it is a ripple effect.
Yes.
I have seen families change
Mhm.
simply because one person
Mhm.
decided to better themselves, in that personal
Yes,
development
yes, the
and
ripple
growth.
effect is there. And
Yeah.
scientifically, it is proven that those that step into that higher loving vibration of self and of what they do, and that beautiful ripple effect literally has turned up the volume, the frequency, the hertz, which is of a more healing frequency. That love frequency is a frequency that allows things to grow, allows things to heal, and is a united vibration. It invites other people to be there. We don't want to lower ourselves down to the anger. We want to bring people out of the anger up to this higher vibration. And when we do it as an individual, we resonate that frequency out, and it ignites the frequency in others wanting to do it for themselves. This is what's going to heal the planet. This is what's going to heal humanity. And the ripple effect is it's also going to heal the universe, but that's another show. So
Yeah.
so
Wow.
quickly about the podcast. Obviously, you're having some wonderful people on there. I was there. So,
That's
so
right. Only the best.
and podcasting is wonderful. We talked about that in your show and the impact that it has. But tell us more about your podcasting and how people can find you, how often you do it.
Yeah, so so if you want to find it, it's on most podcasting platforms, but if you want to find links, it's at normal-lies.com. And I have all the links there, and all the episodes are there. I don't have as many episodes as you do.
I've been
I'm
doing
on,
it 10 years, so yeah,
yeah,
I got a few under my
yeah.
belt.
Yeah, I've been doing it just over a year now, and I'm just past 45 episodes.
Excellent.
But it's so interesting. When I started out, I started with it being okay. This is going to help my business,
Mhm.
right? I was going to do some testimonials and case studies, and maybe some on-air coaching. And I did do one testimony early on. I think it was episode 7 with one of my clients. And then, as you know how things morph,
Mhm,
right? And
mhm.
they change, and that's what I was warned. It's like, well, it's gonna find a life of its own.
Exactly.
And I just felt like, you know what, and it doesn't feel right for this. This is my, yes, I do like a little blurb at the end. If you want to talk to me, go to my website and let's talk. But it really has gotten to be more of my mission,
Yeah.
my
Yes.
mission to reach more people with this message that we've been talking about today,
Yes. Yes.
and that don't believe the lies in your head,
Hmm.
and don't believe that the lies that you've been born into.
Hmm.
So, because if you start questioning that,
Yes.
then it is amazing what you will find. And it continues the conversation. I'm
Mm.
not saying I have all the answers. I probably don't have any answers, but I don't need to
But
have the
sometimes it's not about the
answers.
question, it's about the question.
It's
Is
about
it,
the
yes,
question.
does that
Yes.
question pivot you enough to inquire? pivot you enough
Yes.
to see something from a different perspective, just show you there is another angle to look at something. Ask the question. From
Yes.
there, you seek your own answer.
Yes. And as you mentioned earlier about as little kids, we were playing, we were having fun. We asked questions.
All the
My,
time.
my grandson's almost 4 now. And he's like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yes.
Why? And, why dog? I
Yes.
mean, it's sometimes they're really silly
Yeah.
questions, but I'm thinking, well, why do we call that a dog? Where did that
Yes.
name come from?
Right.
So it's okay. It's okay to question and be curious. We need to explore and we need to figure out our own answers and what resonates with us rather than we've given away our power.
Oh.
We've really given away our power to other people, to circumstances. The thing that really scares me is when people give their power away to other people,
Yeah.
whether it's their family or, their spouse, or if it's some ideology or some guru. I'm not a guru. Don't follow me.
Yeah. Right.
It's okay to listen to me. I love to have a conversation, but I don't get it all right.
Right.
And I'm telling you right now that how many times has there been a time when I thought something was absolutely true? And then I found out later it was not true. I was totally wrong. And so I've just gotten to the point where this is what I think right now, but let's have a conversation about it because I might learn something.
Right. And the thing is, it's okay. It's perfectly okay to look at something and say, I knew what I knew then based on the information I had then. I now know differently. Please don't beat yourself up for thoughts or actions you did in the past. It is where are you now and what is your next step of inquiry going to be?
Yes. Yes. So that's what I like to bring to my podcast are the questions. What are your thoughts? What did you think was true? And what have you learned? Because my experience, I have my experience. This is my husband and I used to look at people and and you go, my gosh, they live in their own little world. Like they understand that they can't do that. Like they live in their own little world. And then one day I just realized, well, we all do.
Yes.
We all live in our own little world because no one has had the experience that you have had, that I have had, that the person sitting next to you has had. We can't know exactly what that person has gone through
Until we ask.
Exactly. And then we can maybe get an idea, but we're not going to understand totally. No. But that's exactly what you just said, until we ask. And so, and I think I mentioned this when we were talking on my podcast, is everyone has a story to tell.
Yes, everybody does. And it all matters. Every story matters. It really, really does. Yeah. Yes. And that's what, that's what podcasting is about. We're sharing those stories, not only because they matter, because they can be a reflection of our own, but because there's always going to be something you will learn. And if you come away with an answer, fantastic. But if you come away with even more questions, fabulous.
And that's usually what happens. That's usually what, and this kind of brings it full circle, because as we started talking about at the beginning, we started talking about feeling it. We live in a time where we're so busy,
yes,
and we don't feel seen and heard. And again, that's what my podcast and that's what your podcast is. That's what we're about, is making sure that people feel seen and heard.
Exactly.
Because I recently went through a period where I didn't really, something was up with me and I couldn't figure out what it was wrong. And there's that internal work. And I was doing some internal work. And suddenly I realized there was a space that I was in that I was not feeling seen and heard. And so I had to reach out and ask for help for this, in this group, and say, this is what's going on with me. I need some support. And so with that support, I was able to speak up. and say, hey, this is, this is my experience, and not blaming anybody. It's just
Right.
that it's just, hey, this is my experience, that when you said this is how it landed.
Mm.
And then just shut up
Yeah.
and give them an opportunity to see how they react. And it was great, because he's like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry, that's not how I intended it, but it doesn't matter,
Yes.
it had an impact. And that's another thing I hope people understand, that just assume good intentions. I
Yes.
love that. However, intentions don't lessen impact.
No.
You've also, with assume good intentions on this end, but if you are saying something, and you need to monitor
Yes.
the impact over there.
It's not just the words, it's the tone as well.
Oh, and it could
Mm.
be, and the other thing, it could be that maybe that person that you were speaking to was having a bad day,
And
or
it just
maybe they were
reflected on you.
already,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, or
Yeah.
maybe they were sort of triggered here,
Mm.
and then you said something and they just,
Ah,
whoa.
yeah.
Right. So then it's like, okay, so you've got to, you've got to monitor that impact, and then be the person that goes and cleans it up,
Yes.
and
Own
not,
it.
well,
Own it,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
don't defend it. Okay, I'm
Right.
sorry I was having a bad day. I shouldn't have done that. But the whole lesson here is not only in the apology, but it's also being more mindful in how you approach other people.
Yep.
If you are angry and mad, this isn't a time to go and have a conversation with someone. It's a time to spend that
Right.
anger, get it out of your system so you don't impose it on someone else. And if you do snap, to own it and go, my apologies. You caught me at a moment. That doesn't mean that it's right, but I'm sorry, you were there, and I apologize for snapping. It's got nothing to do with you. It is just something I was going through. And we can all forgive that, right? Because we all do it at some point, but it's own it, own it, own it. We could
Yeah.
carry on talking. It's very, very easy.
Yes.
But would you give people, again, the podcast site, but also your own site for people to reach out to you for coaching? And then leave us with a little bit of pearls of wisdom.
Oh my gosh. Okay, the first two are easy. So you can actually get to both places, both of my websites, from either one. So the podcast website is normal-lies.com. And then my coaching website is liveinspiredlifecoaching.com. So either one has links to the other. So you can't go wrong.
Right. And that little words of wisdom, maybe a bit of either advice or just something to leave somebody with, a nugget to leave us with.
Oh my goodness. What do I want to say? I think I love this conversation, because it was about kind of getting quiet and listening to that still small voice inside. And I think that is our work to do, is to really connect with who we are, as we talked about, we've lost that connection with ourselves. So I think basically the oh, well, you know what, I have it right in front of me. I have a quote uh up, and it's by this woman named Maria Irving. I don't know who she is, but I loved this quote. It says, be true to yourself, and the right people and resources show up. The universe always conspires for the right meetings to occur. Everything is unfolding as it should.
Amen. Amen. Absolutely summed it right up. It is, very often just get out of the way and allow.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing. I hope you come back again. I've absolutely loved this. Very easy to talk to, and really got lovely synergy here. So thank you so much for sharing here today, your lovely vulnerability and your wisdom as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Sarah, for allowing me to be here and for giving me your time on my podcast. And I thank you for the work that you do. It is
Right
life
back at you, honey.
changing.
Right back at you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Well, folks, there's a lot that you've learned here today. And again, I talk about podcast parties. You know, you have book clubs, podcast club. Please listen to it, take notes, and then at the end have a conversation. What came up that was a reflection on you that you can talk about? Because that conversation is where you're really going to be able to shed light on maybe something that you didn't even know was there. That's what we're here for. Just to shed light on something for you to pivot and to be able to ask for the help that you need, because we're here for you. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show right here on selfdiscoverymedia.com. Please tune in to our selfdiscoverymedia.com/shows and you will see all the other genres that we have from you. Every week on Tuesday, we bring you new shows from illuminating people. If you know someone that should be interviewed, please contact us at info@selfdiscoverymedia.com. Now stay tuned for your next show.